After last week's relatively non-topical Randy storyline, South Park's latest episode tackled a very hot-button subject from over the past year or so: deep learning AI, and specifically ChatGPT. And they did it in a very creative way, reintroducing Stan's relationship with Wendy for the first time in quite a while, and laying out both the benefits and clear follies in overutilizing AI tech. There are some very fun details to break down here, plus I'm gonna sidebar for a South Park conspiracy corner, because I think they may have used more AI than they let on in this episode. So let's get into it. So, first off, y'all think this entire episode was inspired by Bloom's AI-written South Park video essay? Because I definitely think it could have been inspired by Bloom's AI-written South Park video essay. He basically did the entire thing with ChatGPT, and even used an AI voice clone of himself for the video. It's pretty interesting, and this episode definitely explores the idea of relying too much on AI rather than living life for yourself, and it does this through the reintroduction of Stan and Wendy's relationship. Interestingly, we actually haven't seen a ton about Stan and Wendy in a while. Back in season 20, all the girls broke up with all the boys as a form of protest, including Wendy, though Stan tried to win her back with, Bill Clinton's help, but we never got any confirmation that they did get back together until now. Though the Fractured But Whole video game has dialogue that implies they're still romantic with each other when the pair are battling together.
Hey, that's no normal girl you're hitting there. Thanks, I think.
And in the future, in the post-COVID specials, it's definitely implied that Stan has feelings for Wendy as he starts drinking when he learns that Wendy is married. Then, in the fixed timeline future in Return of COVID, she's single and agrees to spend New Year's with Stan.
You want to maybe spend New Year's together again?
I'd love that.
But as far as the current present timeline goes, there have been 0 episodes that confirm or deny that the pair are in an ongoing relationship anymore, until this latest episode. But man, while this was all very fun, as a return to this pairing, it was kind of a bummer. I expect Stendy shippers are not stoked on how this episode went down. It starts with Bebe being very excited and sharing Clyde's incredibly romantic text with the other girls.
He said, "I know I'm in love with you because spending time with you makes me feel like I'm home and I can't imagine life without you."
This makes Wendy self-conscious about her own relationship with Stan, and she scrolls through her phone looking at all of the texts she sent him, only to be met with thumbs up reacts from Stan. And man, Wendy's texts are very sweet and supportive towards Stan. I really like the detail that she asked if his dad was doing alright and saying she's always there for him, referencing back to the events of the previous episode, Japanese Toilet, when Randy got shot. But it sure does make Stan look like an asshole, and the rest of the episode doesn't do much better. Stan asks Clyde how he sends such great texts to Bebe, and he reveals his secret.
ChatGPT, dude.
Like I said, this is a very funny use of ChatGPT, and it definitely made me wonder how many people are out there using like dating apps and AI technology to make themselves seem more interesting than they actually are. But man, as a fan of Stan as a character, this whole following montage was very sad. They go out of their way to show that Stan isn't using ChatGPT as a tool or aid in his conversations. He's literally using it as a replacement for his own half of the conversation. Not even reading Wendy's responses, just copying, pasting, copying, pasting. And Wendy is ecstatic because she believes that she is actually connecting to Stan on a level she never has before. And man, the montage of all this going down is so emotionally affecting, with a great song choice and really creative shots to showcase how happy Wendy is. When South Park wants to get emotional, they can really get emotional. Actually, I made an entire video about that with Ellis Mark, you should check it out. But I think the episode does a great job showcasing why this was a horrible decision from Stan. Wendy eventually brings up to Stan in person that she opened up to him about some very sensitive things that happened to her as a child, and Stan had no idea what she was talking about. Furthermore, ChatGPT's responses implied that something similar happened to Stan. I like this metaphor because it shows how dangerous it can be to entirely remove the human aspect from the use of AI. And I think this is a major part of the episode's message. We'll get back to that in a bit. The other major plotline in this episode is that a handful of students have been using ChatGPT to write their papers and get good grades, including Cartman, Butters, and Clyde. This eventually leads to the suspicion that people have been using learning AI for their papers, and the school hires someone to investigate. I really loved how the investigator was a literal shaman. I think people thought that this was a specific reference to something, but I'm pretty sure the idea is just, what if they used the least scientific methods possible to seek out the use of this deeply scientific technology? It was pretty funny. I also liked the return of Rick in this episode, Garrison's boyfriend, who teaches him about ChatGPT, and I also liked Garrison's dilemma, expecting that he'll get fired if they discover his students used AI. But I especially liked the way Garrison spelled out the arguments for and against AI with his own own personal deliberations, likening the occasional use of AI to having a really great writer's assistant to help build ideas, but then becoming furious at the idea that Rick may have been using AI to respond to his messages. Because when you entirely remove the human aspect of creating art or writing, you get something that is hollow and only based on regurgitated ideas that already exist, and the end of the episode brilliantly showcases this. Wendy is cornered by the shaman because Stan sent so many AI-generated texts to her phone, and to save the day, Stan uses ChatGPT. The entire last chunk of the episode was written by ChatGPT, meant to cleanly wrap up the episode and tie up the loose ends without anybody suffering any consequences. It's narrated by an AI voice, and what it perfectly illustrates is that the reliance on AI basically generated a deeply unsatisfying and nonsensical end to their story. The episode ends with nobody angry and everybody happy, with no real resolution or reason for them to feel that way.
Dude, how did you pull all that off? ChatGPT, dude.
It illustrates their entire point, that AI can be used as a tool to aid in writing, but when used by itself, it doesn't quite deliver something worthwhile. And the cut to credits that the episode was written by Trey Parker and ChatGPT is a great joke to end on. Now, I expect that the only real use of ChatGPT in this episode was maybe for the text messages, and of course for the final ending sequence, though I would also probably expect that the ending sequence required some editing from Trey. However, I think that maybe there was one more secret use of AI generation in this episode, which is a good time to introduce our first ever
South Park Conspiracy Corner.
Okay, hear me out. Last week's episode, Japanese Toilet, notably featured 0 examples of Matt Stone's voice acting. Everyone was Trey Parker and the other cast members. No Kyle, no Butters, no Kenny. This week, there was a single character voiced by Matt Stone, and that was Butters. And Butters had shockingly few lines compared to the usual use of Butters as a character. It was incredibly noticeable in this scene in the bathroom where Butters doesn't talk until the very end, and over the course of the episode, he only had like 3 lines.
Right, but then you went and blabbed about it to class. ChatGPT, what are we gonna do?
Additionally, at the very end of the episode in the credits, there is a special thanks to Play.ht for AI voices. Now sure, this could just be referring to the AI generated voice for the final sequence, but it does say voices plural, and Play.ht also does voice cloning. So here's the conspiracy. What if a couple of weeks ago, Matt Stone got a fancy Japanese toilet and Trey Parker started roasting him for it, opting to write an entire episode around the idea? And what if this made Matt Stone so upset that he refused to participate in the episode at all, and is still so mad about it that he didn't participate in the latest episode either, forcing Trey to use limited Butters dialogue generated by AI technology? Or maybe Matt Stone is just sick and hasn't been able to read for the show for a couple of weeks. I also live in LA, and there are a lot of sicknesses going around right now. Actually, if you listen to some of my recent videos, you might be able to tell the weeks that I was sick. Plus, many people have pointed out that even Trey's voices have sounded off this week.
For the most part, they were terrible.
It could be attributed to the fact that these dudes are getting older, but also it's fully possible that Matt has been sick and Trey caught whatever Matt had, and they're struggling through this dialogue. Either way, Matt Stone's absence from the voice cast is definitely noticeable and intriguing. Hopefully he's just been sick and will return next week, because it's been weird to have absolutely 0 Kyle participation in either of the last 2 episodes, and also just such limited Butters dialogue. I wonder if this is one of the reasons they've been using Betsy more, voiced by Trey's daughter Betty. She once again had a line of dialogue in this episode and was featured very heavily in different shots. Lastly, I want to talk about one other point they made in this episode. Stan asserts that AI has to be a tool that is accessible to everyone because it's so powerful that corporations are going to use it regardless. And if people don't adapt, they will simply be replaced. And I think this is a very unfortunate reality. There are so many instances already of companies trying to cut costs by replacing artists with AI, and the better AI gets, the more likely this is to keep happening. Corridor Digital recently did this rock, paper, scissors, quote-unquote anime, and while many claim this is mostly just a cool tech experiment, the reality is that they frame it as a way to make animation more accessible to non-artists, but they also specifically used frames from the anime Vampire Hunter D to generate the art style that they used. They literally had to rip off other people's art to make all of this happen at all. The channel Mother's Basement actually did a great video about this, highly recommend checking it out. I do think that there is a place for AI in art, but it has to be in aid of actual artists. It cannot be at their expense. And unfortunately, with our highly profit-driven culture, corporations are for certain going to see this as simply a way to save money. So I do think that they have a point here. I do not think people should be generating art art or shitty stories with AI and selling them for profit, because ultimately that art can only exist by pulling from the existence of other artists' hard work without any residuals going their way. Hopefully, precedents set in copyright law will prevent artists from being exploited by deep learning AI. But there is no doubt in my mind that corporations, studios, and people whose only job is to maximize profits will exploit this technology wherever possible and exploit real, actual artists in the process. There may just have to be some kind of middle ground in which artists utilize AI as an assisting tool, but not as an outright replacement. The moment jobs are lost to these machines is the moment that this technology can fuck off. But that's all I got this week. How do you feel about deep learning? Has the latest season of South Park done it for you? Is Matt Stone secretly mad at Trey Parker because of a Japanese toilet conspiracy? Let me know below in the comments, and stay tuned for more. Peace.
Johnny! Two cellos!